The neon sign flickered one last time, Miller's Diner, EST 1962, before going dark for good. Inside, 73-year-old Frank Miller sat alone in booth number 7, the same booth where he'd proposed to his wife Margaret 50 years ago. The bankruptcy papers sat and signed on the Formica tabletop. Frank had been sitting there since dawn, watching the December sun climb over Main Street, illuminating a town he barely recognized anymore. The hardware store where he'd bought his first toolbox was now a vape shop. The movie theater where he'd seen The Graduate was boarded up. Even the church steeple looked smaller somehow. He ran his weathered fingers across the worn vinyl seat. How many conversations had this booth witnessed? How many first dates, breakups, celebrations, and heartaches? How many dreams born and buried right here on this cracked red vinyl? His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. Just one signature and it would all be over. 58 years of early mornings and aching feet. 58 years of burgers and coffee and listening to other people's problems while his own piled up like dirty dishes. Gone. Margaret's voice echoed in his head, clear as the day she'd said it. Frank Miller, you're the stubbornest man I ever met. But don't mistake stubborn for strong. She'd been gone 3 years now. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Sometimes he still forgot. He'd still turn to tell her something, expecting to see her at the register with that half-smile she always wore when he was being ridiculous. The diner felt like a tomb without her. Every morning he'd walk in and wait for her to call out, "Coffee's on, old man." But there was only silence now. Silence and memories and a mountain of debt he couldn't climb. Outside, a young couple walked by, both staring at their phones, earbuds blocking out the world. They didn't even glance at the diner. Why would they? There was a McDonald's and a Panera out by the highway. Fast. Efficient. No old man trying to remember if you liked your eggs scrambled or over easy. The pen touched paper. You gonna sit there all day feeling sorry for yourself? Or you gonna let an old friend buy you a cup of coffee? Frank's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was Tommy Chen, 75 if he was a day, leaning heavy on the same wooden cane he'd carried since Vietnam took his leg in '68. Diners closed, Tommy. Hell, everything's closed. Door was unlocked. Tommy shuffled inside, his cane clicking against the checkered floor tiles. And I didn't ask if it was open. I asked if you wanted coffee. Despite everything, the debt, the despair, the defeat, Frank smiled. He stood up slow, his knees protesting every inch. Some days he felt every one of his 73 years. Today he felt 100. He walked behind the counter and fired up the old coffee maker. The machine was older than most marriages in this town, but it still worked. Some things did. Some things endured when everything else fell apart. As the coffee brewed, Frank stared at the photographs covering the walls. Decades of memories trapped behind dusty glass. There was Margaret in 1965, wearing her pink waitress uniform, laughing at something the camera couldn't capture. God, she was beautiful. All dark hair and bright eyes and the smile that could light up the darkest room. There was Tommy, both legs intact, in his army uniform before shipping out. Just a kid really, 18 years old and convinced he was invincible. There was the whole high school football team from 1978, arms around each other, champions of nothing but hope. Most of them were scattered to the winds now, chasing jobs in cities with names that sounded like promises: Atlanta, Houston, Denver. You remember when Margaret caught you trying to impress her by flipping burgers like some hotshot short-order cook? Tommy called out, settling into the booth with a grunt. Frank chuckled, the sound rusty from disuse. Damn near burned the place down. She said you flipped everything but the burgers, plates, spatulas, your dignity. She had a mouth on her. Frank brought 2 cups over, black coffee steaming. He slid into the booth across from Tommy. Still miss that mouth. Miss everything about her. She's probably up there right now, giving St. Peter hell about the coffee. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from 50 years of friendship. Outside, Main Street was waking up. That's bullshit and you know it. Frank's head jerked up. Tommy rarely cursed. The old man was leaning forward now, his eyes fierce behind his thick glasses. You think this place is just about burgers and coffee? Tommy's voice shook. You know why I come here every Sunday? Why I've come here every Sunday for 40 years. It ain't for your cooking, you're a lousy cook, Frank. Always have been. Well, gee, thanks. I come here because this is where Charlie Patterson told his parents he was gay back in 1992. Tommy's voice cracked. Remember that? Kid was 17, scared out of his mind. His old man stood up, face red as a beet, ready to drag that boy out by his collar. And you know what you did? Frank remembered. God, he remembered. The father's fury, the mother's tears, the boy's absolute terror. You walked over, put your hand on that man's shoulder, and you said, "Sit down, Bill." That's still your boy. Maybe even more your boy now that he's trusting you with the truth. So sit down and listen. Tommy wiped his eyes. Charlie's a doctor now. Lives in San Francisco with his husband. He still sends me Christmas cards. He told me once that if you hadn't done that, if you hadn't stopped his father that day, he doesn't know if he'd have made it to 18. The coffee was getting cold between Frank's hands. I come here, Tommy continued, his voice rough as gravel, because this is where Sandra Morrison brought her little girl every Saturday after the divorce. Every Saturday for 3 years, even though Sandra was working 2 jobs and could barely afford groceries. And you never charged her full price, but you never made her feel like charity either. You'd just say, "Oh, we got a special on pancakes today," or "These eggs are about to expire," you'd be doing me a favor. You let that woman keep her dignity while you fed her kid. Tommy, I ain't finished. The old man's hands were shaking now, coffee sloshing in his cup. This is where the whole damn town came on September 12, 2001. You remember? Nobody wanted to be alone. We were all too scared, too angry, too confused. And you kept this place open for 36 hours straight. Free coffee. Free food. Just letting people sit and cry and rage and hold on to each other. Frank did remember. He'd called Margaret at home, told her he couldn't leave. She'd understood. She always understood. She'd come down and worked beside him, holding hands with strangers, crying with them, being strong when strength was all they had left. This is where Jenny Cooper got her first job and learned she was smart enough for college. Where Bill Henderson met his second wife after Linda died. Where Tommy's voice broke completely now. Where I learned to walk again after I came back from Nam with one leg and a head full of nightmares. You remember what you told me? I don't. You said, Tommy Chin, you can either sit at home feeling sorry for yourself, or you can drag your sorry ass down here and I'll teach you how to use that cane like a man instead of a crutch. Your choice. So I came. Every day for 6 months. And you made me work. Made me bus tables, made me wipe down counters, made me matter again when I thought I didn't. Frank felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been holding back tears for 3 years. You didn't build a diner, you jackass. Tommy was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. You built a home. You built a family. You built a place where broken people could come and feel whole again, even if just for a cup of coffee. And that don't show up on no balance sheet, but it's worth more than all the money in the world. It's not enough though, is it? Frank's voice came out strangled. Can't pay the bills with memories. Can't compete with efficiency and apps and progress. The word tasted like poison. Maybe I'm just too old for this world. Maybe it's time to let go. Maybe. Tommy shrugged. Or maybe the world's too young and stupid to know what it's losing. The door chimed. They both turned. A young man stood in the doorway, maybe 30 years old, wearing an expensive suit that screamed big city success. He looked around the diner like a man visiting a grave, reverent, scared, on the edge of tears. We're closed, Frank said, his voice harder than he meant it to be. I know. I saw the sign. About the closure. The young man took a step inside, and Frank saw his hands were trembling. Are you Frank Miller? Last time I checked. Who's asking? The young man's face crumpled, then reformed, like he was fighting to hold himself together. You don't remember me. Why would you? It was 20 years ago, and I was nobody. I'm Danny. Danny Kowalski. Frank squinted. Something tugged at the edges of his memory, a skinny kid with thick glasses, always sitting alone in the back corner booth. Always looked like he'd been crying. Always stayed for hours nursing one order of fries. Jesus. Little Danny? You used to come in here after school. Every day for 3 years. Danny moved closer, and now Frank could see the tears running down his face, unchecked. From freshman year till I graduated. Every single day. Do you know why? Frank shook his head, afraid of the answer. Because my parents were drunks. Mean drunks. They'd start fighting around 4 o'clock every day, right when I got home from school. Screaming. Throwing things. Breaking furniture. Breaking each other. Breaking me. His voice was barely a whisper now. I was scared to go home. Terrified. So I'd come here instead. Order fries I'd make last 2 hours, and you'd... He stopped, swallowed hard, tried again. You'd just let me sit. You never rushed me. Never made me feel like I was taking up space or wasting your time. Sometimes you'd bring me a milkshake and say someone ordered it, then changed their mind. I knew you were lying. I knew it was just you being kind. But it gave me a reason to accept it without feeling like charity. The silence in the diner was absolute. Even the old radiator had stopped its familiar clanking. And one day, I was 16, I came in and I'd been crying. My dad had, it doesn't matter. But I was in bad shape. And you sat down across from me, right where you're sitting now, and you didn't ask me what was wrong. You just said, some days are harder than others. But you're still here. That takes guts. Danny wiped his face with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. That was the first time in my life anyone had ever told me I was brave. The first time anyone made me feel like surviving mattered. Like I mattered. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. I left this town the day after graduation. Ran as far as I could. Chicago. Made good money in tech. Got therapy. Got sober, yeah, I followed in my parents' footsteps for a while there. Got my life together, piece by piece. He looked around the diner, at the faded photographs and worn booths and the coffee-stained counter. But I never forgot this place. Never forgot you. This diner saved my life, Mr. Miller. You saved my life. And when I heard it was closing, his voice broke completely. I had to come back. I had to tell you. I had to say thank you for keeping me alive when I didn't want to be. Frank couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. He felt Tommy's hand grip his shoulder, steadying him. You don't owe me nothing, son, Frank finally managed. Maybe not. But I owe this place everything. Danny tapped his phone. I've been texting people all morning. Old classmates. People who grew up here. People who left. And they're all saying the same thing, this place mattered. You mattered. We want to help. I know it might not be enough, but... It ain't about the money, Frank said quietly. I know. It was never about the money, was it? Danny looked at him with something like wonder. It was about giving a damn. About seeing people. About creating a space where people could just be. Without judgment. Without pressure. Just be. Tommy stood up, leaning heavy on his cane, and extended his hand to Danny. Tommy Chen. Pleased to meet you, son. Frank here saved my life too. Seems to be what he does, though he's too stubborn to admit it. As they shook hands, Frank noticed something through the front window. People were gathering on the sidewalk outside. At first just a few, then more. Faces he recognized. Carol from the library. Mike, who used to run the barbershop before it closed last year. Sandra Morrison, older now, gray-haired, holding hands with a young woman, her daughter, all grown up. What the hell? Frank stood up, his legs unsteady. The door opened. Carol walked in first, tears streaming down her weathered face. Frank, you can't close this place. You just can't. Then Mike, carrying a bouquet of flowers like he was visiting a funeral. This place is the heart of this town, damn it. Then Sandra and her daughter, the younger woman holding a baby Frank had never seen before. Then more. And more. They came in ones and twos, then in small groups. Old customers. Former employees. Kids who weren't kids anymore. The booth seats filled up fast. People leaned against the counter. Someone, Frank never found out, who'd turned on the old jukebox that hadn't worked in years, and somehow Dream a Little Dream started playing, Margaret's favorite song. What is this? Frank whispered, his voice cracking like ice. This, Tommy said, his own voice thick with emotion, is people who don't want to lose their home. Jenny Cooper pushed through the growing crowd. She must have been 40 now, wearing a teacher's practical clothes, her hair pulled back in a bun. She grabbed Frank and hugged him so tight he couldn't breathe. You gave me my first paycheck when I was 15, she said into his shoulder. Told me I was college material when my own parents said I was dreaming above my station. Said, smart ain't about what you know, Jenny. It's about what you're willing to learn. I'm a teacher now because of you. Got 30 students, and I tell them the same thing every year. Bill Henderson, tall and gray-haired now, gripped Frank's shoulder with a hand that shook. You introduced me to Sarah after Linda died of cancer. I was a mess. Drinking too much, not sleeping, barely holding on. You sat with me every morning for 6 months. Just sat. Didn't try to fix me. Just kept me company. Then one day Sarah came in for breakfast, and you. He choked up. You brought her over and said, Bill, this is Sarah. She likes her coffee the same way you do. Might be you two have other things in common. We've been married 15 years. Got 2 grandkids because you cared enough to see that 2 broken people might heal better together. One by one they came forward. Each with a story. Each with a memory. Each with a piece of their life that had been shaped in this diner by this stubborn old man who just tried to be decent. A middle-aged woman Frank barely recognized. You gave my mom free meals when Dad lost his job in 1987. Every day for 8 months. Never said a word about it. Never made her feel small. She told me on her deathbed. Said Frank Miller taught her that charity ain't about making people feel grateful, it's about making them feel seen. A man in a wheelchair, you hired me when nobody else would. This was before the ADA, before it was required. I was 22 and scared nobody would give me a chance. You said, if you can handle a spatula, you can handle this grill. Rest is just details. First real job I ever had. Worked here for 5 years. Gave me confidence to get my degree. A teenage girl holding her grandmother's arm. Grandma says you gave her hope when Grandpa died. Says this place taught her she wasn't alone in the world. An older couple, standing hand in hand, we had our first date here in 1971. Our last date before Jim deployed to Vietnam in 1972. Our reunion when he came home in 1973. Our wedding reception in 1974, you let us have it here for free, said it was your gift. We've been married 51 years. The stories kept coming. Waves of them. Memories Frank had forgotten or never knew existed. Little kindnesses that had grown into life-changing moments. Coffee that became courage. Burgers that became bonds. Conversations that became callings. Frank had to sit down. His legs wouldn't hold him. His heart felt too big for his chest, swelling with something he couldn't name. Joy and grief all mixed together. I didn't. I just... Frank's voice failed him completely. I just served food. I just tried to be decent to folks. Exactly, said a voice from the doorway. Frank's head snapped up so fast his neck cracked. His grandson, Michael, stood there. 22 years old, usually glued to his phone, usually too busy with his own life to care about an old man and his dying diner. But now he was here, phone in his pocket, eyes red from crying, jaw clenched like he was trying to hold himself together. Grandpa, Michael's voice broke. He tried again. I've been the biggest idiot in the world. He pushed through the crowd until he stood right in front of Frank's booth. The whole diner had gone quiet. I didn't get it. You kept asking me to learn the business and I kept blowing you off because I thought this place was just old. Outdated. A relic. I didn't understand what you were really doing here. Tears were streaming down Michael's face now. But then Danny started texting people, and the stories started coming, and someone put it on social media, and it went viral. There's thousands of people online sharing memories about this place. About you. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, showed Frank the screen. Comments scrolled past, hundreds of them, thousands, a river of memory and gratitude. My dad proposed to my mom at Miller's Diner in 1979. He died last year. This place closing feels like losing him all over again. I was homeless for 6 months in 1995. Frank Miller let me sleep in the back booth on cold nights. Never called the cops. Just brought me coffee in the morning and treated me like a human being. My brother came back from Iraq with PTSD. Couldn't handle crowds, couldn't handle noise. But he could handle Miller's Diner. Frank let him sit for hours, never bothered him, just kept the coffee coming. My brother said it was the only place he felt safe. He's doing better now. He credits the diner with keeping him alive long enough to get help. Michael wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. You know what I realized? You weren't running a diner. You were running a church. A temple. A sanctuary. Every person who walked through that door, you treated them like they were sacred. Like they mattered. Like their story was worth hearing. Michael. Let me finish. Please. The young man's voice steadied. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm so damn sorry. I was so wrapped up in what I thought success looked like, money, status, moving to the city, that I couldn't see what real success was. You built something that mattered. You touched lives. You saved people. And I was too blind and stupid to see it. He knelt down beside the booth, looking Frank straight in the eye. Teach me. Please. Teach me how to run this place the right way. Your way. I'll quit my job. I'll move back home. I'll learn every damn thing you can teach me. I'll work every day until my feet hurt and my back aches and I understand what you've been doing all these years. Frank looked at his grandson, really looked at him, and saw Margaret's eyes staring back. The same hope. The same determination. The same fire that had made him fall in love with her 50 years ago in this very booth. Michael, I'm old. I'm tired. I don't know if I have it in me to. You don't have to do it alone. Michael's voice was fierce now. None of us want you to do it alone. Tommy stood up. I got my pension. It ain't much, but I'll invest every penny. Danny stepped forward. I've already talked to some people in Chicago. Investors who understand this isn't just about profit margins. People who believe in community. We can get the money for the renovations. I can work weekends, Jenny said. I'm a teacher, my summers are free. My restaurant supply company will give you cost, someone called from the back. I'm a contractor, I'll fix whatever needs fixing for free, another voice added. I can handle your social media. Get the word out to a new generation, a young woman offered. The voices overlapped, each person offering what they had. Time. Money. Skills. Love. Frank looked around at all these faces, young and old, rich and poor, people he'd known for decades and people he'd just met. All of them looking at him like he'd hung the moon, when all he'd ever done was pour coffee and crack eggs and listen. Frank stood up slowly, every joint protesting, every muscle aching. He felt ancient. He felt young. He felt terrified and hopeful and broken and whole all at once. He walked to the wall of photographs, placed his hand against the frame holding Margaret's picture. In the photo, she was laughing, forever young, forever alive. What would you do, Maggie? He whispered. And just like she always did when he asked her impossible questions, he could hear her answer clear as day. You already know, you stubborn old fool. You fight. You always fight for what matters. He turned back to face the crowd, and it was a crowd now. Must have been 50 people packed into this little diner that was only supposed to seat 30. You all know I lost my Margaret 3 years ago. The room went completely silent. Pancreatic cancer. Meanest kind there is. Diagnosed in March, gone by September. 6 months. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. Near the end, she couldn't come to the diner no more. Too weak. Too sick. So you know what we did? He looked around at all the faces watching him. We brought the diner to her. Set up that old coffee maker in her hospice room. The nurses thought we were crazy. I'd make her eggs just the way she liked them, over easy with Tabasco sauce, God help me. And she'd tell me stories about all of you. Every single one of you. He pointed to Jenny. She'd say that Jenny's gonna change the world, Frank. You watch. She's got fire in her. And you did, didn't you? Teacher of the Year 2 years running, I heard. Jenny nodded, crying openly. She'd talk about Bill finding love again. About Tommy's granddaughter graduating college. About every single person who came through that door like they were her own children. Like you were all family. Frank's voice broke completely now. And the night before she died, morphine had her pretty foggy, but she had this one moment of clarity. She grabbed my hand and she said, Frank, that diner ain't ours. It never was. It belongs to everyone who ever needed a place to belong. Don't you dare let it die just because I did. The silence was absolute. Not a person moved. I'd been sitting in that booth all day, staring at these papers, ready to sign everything away. Thinking I was too old, too tired, too done. Thinking the world had moved on and left me behind like some relic in a museum. Thinking my own grandson didn't care about what I'd built. Grandpa, Frank held up his hand. Let me finish, son. I was wrong. I was so damn wrong about all of it. This place doesn't belong to me. It never did. It belongs to every scared kid who needed a safe place to hide. Every couple who fell in love over chocolate shakes. Every widow who couldn't face an empty house. Every vet who couldn't sleep at night. Every single lonely soul who just needed someone to pour them coffee and make them feel like they mattered. He picked up the bankruptcy papers. Looked at them for a long moment. Then he tore them in half. The crowd erupted. Cheering, crying, hugging each other. Someone started clapping and then they all were, the sound like thunder in the small space. Frank had to shout over the noise. Now hold on. Hold on. This ain't gonna be easy. We're gonna need money, real money. We're gonna need time and work and more sweat than any of us probably want to give. The health inspector wants $20,000 in upgrades. The roof needs work. The plumbing's shot. It's gonna be hard. Nothing worth a damn ever is, Tommy said. Frank smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 3 years. All right then. Michael, you ready to learn how to flip burgers without burning down my diner? Yes, sir. More than ready. Danny, you serious about those investors? Dead serious. I'll have proposals to you by end of week. Tommy, you still remember how to bust tables with that cane? Better than you remember how to cook, old man. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then I guess Miller's Diner is back in business. Frank's voice grew stronger. But we're doing things different this time. We're gonna update, put in that new equipment, maybe get one of those computer registers Michael keeps talking about. But we ain't gonna forget who we are. We're gonna use all that technology, but we're gonna remember that no app can replace a handshake. No efficiency can replace eye contact. No automation can replace caring about people. He looked around at every single face. And we're gonna make damn sure that anyone who walks through that door, anyone at all, feels like they matter. Because they do. Every single one of them. Rich or poor. Young or old. Local or stranger. They all matter. That's what Margaret taught me. That's what this place has always been about. And that's what it's gonna keep being about. 6 months later. Frank Miller stood outside his diner at 5 a.m., watching his grandson unlock the door. The neon sign flickered to life, Miller's Diner, EST 1962, but now there was a new sign next to it, under new management. Same old heart. Michael had learned fast. The kid had his grandmother's work ethic and his grandfather's stubborn refusal to quit. He could crack eggs one-handed now, flip burgers without looking, remember orders for 12 tables without writing anything down. But more importantly, he'd learned the other stuff. The important stuff. Frank watched through the window as an old homeless man shuffled in. Frank didn't recognize him, must be new in town. He watched Michael pour coffee without being asked, slide a menu across the counter, treat the man like he was the mayor instead of someone who obviously hadn't showered in a week. Coffee's hot, Michael said. Take your time looking at the menu. Frank's chest swelled with pride. The renovations had cost $35,000 in the end. Danny's investors had covered most of it. The rest had come from a GoFundMe that had raised $42,000 in 3 weeks, people from all over the country donating, sharing stories about diners in their own towns that had meant something to them. The new kitchen gleamed with stainless steel. The health inspector had nearly cried with joy. But booth number 7 remained exactly as it was: worn vinyl, cracked table, the spot where Frank had proposed to Margaret preserved like a shrine. Every Sunday morning, Frank still came in early, made the first pot of coffee, sat in his booth. Sometimes he worked. Sometimes he just watched. But he was always there. Tommy arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, like clockwork, came clicking across the fresh tiles. "Morning, old man." "Morning, yourself. You're late." "I'm 10 minutes early, you jackass." They grinned at each other. The diner filled up quick these days. A mix of old regulars and new faces drawn by the story that had spread across social media: the diner that refused to die, the community that saved it, the old man who'd spent 58 years teaching people that kindness mattered more than profit. News crews had come. Magazine writers. Even a documentary filmmaker who'd spent 3 weeks following Frank around with a camera, though Frank couldn't imagine why anyone would want to watch an old man pour coffee for an hour. But the attention had brought something unexpected. Other small businesses started fighting back. The bookstore 2 towns over that was about to close launched a crowdfunding campaign and raised enough to stay open. An old movie theater in Pennsylvania started a community ownership program. A family restaurant in Oregon went viral with their own story of survival. It was like someone had lit a match and the whole country suddenly remembered that not everything worth having could be measured in quarterly earnings and stock prices. Jenny walked in at 7 a.m., kissed Frank's cheek, tied on an apron. She worked Saturday and Sunday mornings now, said it kept her grounded during the school year. By 8 a.m., every seat was full. Frank watched it all from his booth: his kingdom, his legacy, his love letter to a wife who'd believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. A young woman came in, hesitant, looking around like she wasn't sure she belonged. College-aged, maybe. Backpack slung over one shoulder. Eyes red like she'd been crying. Michael noticed her immediately. "Sit wherever you like." "Coffee?" She nodded, sliding into a booth by the window. Frank watched his grandson pour the coffee, set it down gently. "Take your time with the menu. No rush." The girl looked up, surprised by the kindness in his voice. "Thanks. You okay?" She shrugged. "Bad week." "Yeah. I get those." Michael pulled out his order pad, but he didn't push. Just stood there, present, patient. "The pancakes are pretty good. My grandpa taught me the recipe." "Okay. Pancakes. You got it." As Michael walked away, the girl wrapped her hands around the coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Frank recognized that look. He'd seen it 1,000 times over the years. Someone hanging on by a thread, needing just one person to notice they existed. His grandson had noticed. Frank felt tears prick his eyes. Margaret would have loved this. Would have loved seeing Michael carry on what they'd built. Would have loved knowing that the diner would outlive them both. Tommy slid into the booth across from Frank. "You did good, old man." "We did good." "Yeah. We did." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 old men who'd seen the world try to grind them down and had refused to break. Outside, the sun climbed higher over Main Street. The town was waking up. People were walking to work, kids were heading to school, life was going on like it always did. But inside Miller's diner, something else was happening. Something quiet and powerful and absolutely essential. People were being seen. Being heard. Being reminded that they mattered. one cup of coffee at a time. 1 year later. Frank Miller died peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday night, 1 week after his 74th birthday. The doctor said it was his heart, it just wore out after 74 years of beating. The funeral was standing room only. But what people talked about for years afterward wasn't the funeral. It was what happened the next morning. Michael opened the diner at 5 a.m., just like his grandfather had done for 58 years. He made the first pot of coffee using the old machine Frank had refused to replace. He unlocked the door. He turned on the lights. And they came. By 6 a.m., every seat was full. By 7 a.m., people were standing outside in the cold, waiting. By 8 a.m., there must have been 200 people crowded in and around Miller's diner. They didn't come for breakfast. They came to share stories. About the old man who'd poured their coffee and saved their lives, one small kindness at a time. About the diner that had been a sanctuary when the world felt too hard. About a legacy that couldn't be measured in money but was worth more than all the wealth in the world. Michael stood behind the counter, tears streaming down his face, listening to people share pieces of his grandfather he'd never known. Tommy was there, of course. Oldest friend, last man standing from the old guard. He raised his coffee cup in a toast. To Frank Miller, who taught us that the most important thing we can do in this world is show up for each other. Who proved that one person really can make a difference. Who never forgot that everyone who walks through that door is fighting a battle we know nothing about and deserves kindness anyway. To Frank, the crowd echoed. Michael looked at the photograph on the wall, his grandfather and grandmother on their wedding day, young and hopeful and so damn in love. I promise, he whispered. I'll keep it going. I'll make you proud. And he did. Miller's Diner is still there today. Still serving coffee. Still treating every person who walks through that door like they matter. Because they do. We all do.